Dear church, let's talk about singing. Hello and welcome to the Dear Church podcast. I'm your host, Chris McCurley. I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to let you know that we have a special guest with us today, my good friend, Mike Rogers. Mike is one of the song leaders where I preach at the Oldham Lane Church of Christ. Mike is also a professor at Abilene Christian University, along with many other talents and abilities that you have. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. If you would, before we kind of jump into our discussion today, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, about your family and everything?
Okay. Well, I'm married and have 3 kids. My oldest is a junior music ed major at UNT, and my middle, is a girl, and she is a freshman at ACU, where I teach. And my youngest is a senior at Abilene High School, and she should be coming to ACU. She got her acceptance letter. That was exciting. She'll be a music ed major voice, and so we're excited about her getting started there as well. My background was a trumpet player and trained to be a band director, which I was for 13 years in Texas, different schools. I was 6A, 5A back then. Did that for a long time. And then I went back to school, and now I teach at Abilene Christian University. I teach music theory, ear training, orchestration, counterpoint. I'm the jazz ensemble director, teach jazz combo, jazz concepts, a lot of different things. In my non-academic work, I do a couple of different things. Work with the Praise and Harmony series, the a cappella Praise and Harmony series. So if you Google a cappella with 2 P's and 2 L's, Praise and Harmony, you'll see some videos that we do. We equip churches. Mostly Churches of Christ. We equip with PowerPoint slides and CDs of contemporary music as well as older hymns. And I also teach at the Worship Leader Institute, where we train a cappella worship leaders in the Churches of Christ.
Wow. So you got a lot of plate spinning. I know you're gone a lot in the summer with the Worship Leader Institute and all that. And
it's nice to be able to do all the things you love to do.
Exactly. It sounds like it. And of course, I can attest to the fact you got a wonderful family and love having you at Oldham Lane, and love the talent and the ability that you bring to our song leading. We got a lot of talented guys at Oldham Lane, and I thank you so much for being a part of that. And you bring something to the song leading aspect of worship that I've never really thought about. There's a lot of things that you and I have discussed, and a lot of things that you add that I've never really thought about. And so I want to kind of start at the base level and then maybe get into some of those things. Most of our listeners and or watchers of this podcast know that Churches of Christ are distinct for a cappella singing, in that we don't use musical instruments in our worship. This is not really a discussion about why we sing a cappella versus not using an instrument, but I do want to discuss why it is that we sing. Obviously, we go to Ephesians 5:19 a lot of times, where it talks about the command of sing to one another in songs, hymns, spiritual songs, making melody in your heart. I think a lot of times we spend so much time proof texting verse 19 to say this is why we sing a cappella that we don't really focus on why we actually sing. And I think people miss a lot of times that Ephesians 5:18 through 21 is all one sentence in the Greek. And so to just pluck out verse 19 is really doing a grave injustice to that text there, but also the fact that Paul's not making a defense for a cappella singing versus instrumental music. He's talking about the theological experience of singing. He's talking about how singing is to be an educational experience. What would you add to that when we talk about why we sing? And I know you have a lot to say about the unification that singing brings. Talk a little bit about that, because there's some really good stuff there.
Well, those are 2 separate issues, I think. Why we sing and the unification part of singing would be one of that, subheading. But I think we sing because we're created in the image of God who sings.
Yeah.
We are a people who sing. And, if you go back to Zephaniah chapter 3, we see a prophecy about God singing over his people. God sings over his people. You go to Hebrews 2, there's a messianic prophecy that's quoted there from Psalms 22 where it says that Jesus, talking about Jesus, I will lift up your name among my brethren, and I'll sing praises to your name. And then we see Jesus actually singing. The night he was betrayed, they sang a hymn and went on the Mount of Olives. Jesus sang. God the Father sang. Jesus the Son sang. And the scripture you just mentioned in Ephesians 5 that you were making a great point about begins with, do not be drunk with wine, wherein is dissipation, but be filled with the Spirit, speaking to yourselves in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody in your heart to the Lord. When we're filled with the Spirit, we sing.
Yes.
God the Spirit provokes singing. God the Father sings. God the Son sings. God the Spirit provokes the singing when we're filled with the Spirit. And I often wonder when people choose not to sing, are you filled with the Spirit?
Right, exactly.
And so, but I think that we sing because we can't help but sing. We have a song to sing. We are created to sing. We are created in the image of God who sings. And so how can we help but singing? I think about this wonderful scene in Revelation 14 where you have Jesus standing on Mount Zion, and you have the 144,000 who were redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, and they were singing a song that no one else could learn except the 144,000 who were redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Because those of us who have been redeemed, we have a song.
Yeah.
We have a song to sing that an outsider cannot know. Yeah. They don't know the story. They don't know the feeling of being redeemed. They can't sing that song.
Sure.
How can we not sing?
Yeah.
That's how I think about it.
Yeah, you led a song not long ago, How Can We Keep From Singing Your Praise? You know, that's a beautiful
great Chris
song.
Tomlin song.
Yes, and I love that song. I love when we all sing it in unison in the church. So we can't lose sight of our purpose. I think too many times when it comes to our singing, we focus a lot of attention on, the notes, the tone, being in the right key and all that. Nothing wrong with that. Certainly, I think that's important. But what I hear you saying is, it's got to come from a heart. It's got to come from being filled with the Spirit. It's got to come from a place where I can't hold this in because I'm redeemed, and the redeemed people of God can't help but sing. Am I right?
Yeah. And you go back to that Ephesians 5 passage, singing and making melody in your heart. Like you say, we as Church of Christ theology, which is nothing wrong with, we say the melody is to be made in your heart, the solo. Yeah. But there's a heart part to this,
yes.
right? And that's what we miss the message here. There's a heart part involved. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 14, I will sing with the Spirit and the understanding. There is a spiritual part. There's a heart part. Colossians 3:16 talks about with the heart. And so we have the heart involved. It's not just a cerebral exercise in singing the right notes and the words, although I advocate trying our best as we do in any part of our worship.
Yes.
But even if you can't sing the right notes, sing anyway.
Right.
I am overwhelmed with people who just can't sing the right notes. It brings me to tears when they're trying their best to sing.
Sure.
Because I just think, he just wants to sing so badly. And he's got the song in him, and we're connected in that way.
That's beautiful.
Even though they don't sing the right notes. It doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
I love it.
Right. I was preaching in Cassville, Missouri, and before I came to Abilene, and once a month on Sunday, we'd go to Red Rose Inn, which was a nursing home, and we would sing for the residents there. And none of us sang very well, but there was this one gentleman there named Shane. Shane had severe cerebral palsy to where he was non-communicative. You couldn't understand him, but every time we sang, he got a book out. I'd turn it to the right page for him. I knew very well he couldn't read music. You could just tell. And he moaned and he groaned, and you could tell he was putting everything into it he had. But it was a joyful noise, but you couldn't understand it. And there were a few residents there that would look at him with a stern look, like, stop, you're ruining this, And I remember stepping in one day and just saying, do you think God is appreciative of Shane and what he is doing? I think absolutely.
Yeah.
100%,
Every voice counts.
Every voice counts. I love that. One of the things that
Chris, we have hold that thought.
Yeah,
we have a saying at the Worship Leader Institute.
Yeah,
and that is, singing is not for singers. Singing is for believers.
Yeah, I love it.
And so every voice counts.
Every voice counts. I like that. And so what are some of the things that you talk about the Worship Leader Institute, you talk about, well, we could even talk about, some of the stuff you do, in your role at Abilene Christian University and in your teaching role. When it comes to working with folks about singing, I know you've been teaching a new singing class at Oldham Lane where we learn some of the newer songs.
Yeah, Luke Burnham and I.
Yeah, you and Luke Burnham and Don Connell's been helping
Yeah.
with that, and y'all do a great job with that.
Yeah.
But where's that line? You talk about just sing even if you don't sing well, but I mean there is an aspect where we want to do this the best we can. We want to put
Absolutely.
our best foot forward. One of the things that's always bothered me is it seems like Christians have no trouble bashing the churches that use the instrument in worship, but yet we don't really put any effort into singing well. And I think our singing and our praises to God should be as good as we can make it, even if it's subpar. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I think we're in a really crucial point in our history, Chris. We have a wonderful tradition. It's amazing to sing in 4 parts with the notes harmonizing together. I don't say that we have to be singing in 4-part harmony. Jesus didn't sing in 4-part harmony.
Right.
4-part harmony wasn't even a thing,
Right.
Until it was formulated, in the 17th century into functional harmony, which is a whole discussion, not interesting to anybody but me. But singing, everybody singing the way we do, was started by education. People were taught how to do it, and then we raised a generation that knew how to do it, and this was done through singing schools. Men would go to different churches and they would sing, and we would use shaped notes, which a lot of people listening to this may not know what that is, but the shaped notes show us which scale degree we're singing. In other words, the do, re, mi that we're on is indicated by a shape. And so when this was taught to people out in places that didn't have music education, they learned very quickly how to make the right sounds come out. And so this was a training that was done, and a whole generation sprang up that was doing this. And even when I was a kid, and I'm 55 now, when I was a kid in the 70s, we would have singing schools every summer for 1 week. We'd go every night to the church building and learn how to sing. And I knew how to sing and how to read music before I was even in the 6th grade.
Wow.
And I could sight sing. And not because of my gifting, but because of the training I had.
Yes.
And my mom taught us, and we had the singing schools. And so I remember the first time I looked at a songbook, a real songbook with regular notes in it, in the 6th grade, and I said, "What are all these so's?"
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're all round notes, and I didn't know how to read those. And I had to learn how to read that. But my point is, education got us here, and we've stopped doing it. And so we don't have education anymore in the churches of Christ. We have some singing schools that are, frankly not well attended, and people don't want to learn. So I think the key to continuing our heritage in 4-part a cappella singing is going to be in the individual churches doing training. Yeah. And I would love for us to do that at all the congregations. You got to get the kids when they're little, though. You got to get them in 3rd and 4th grade. Once they get to be 5th and 6th graders, it's not so cool anymore. But if you've already got them doing it, then they can't unlearn what they've learned.
That's right.
Right. So when they get to high school, then they're doing choir stuff and in the church setting and LTC and whatever things we do, and it becomes part of who they are. But we've got a lot of different people going different directions here, right? In the churches of Christ, some going instrumental. We've got a lot of people doing praise teams so they can have the parts heard. But the way we do it, which is the way I love to do it, is one leader and the church singing all the parts. And in order for us to keep that, we're going to have to start educating people how to sing.
Well, and one of the things that you just said there is, at Oldham Lane, we have about 5 or 6 on Sunday morning that are in a rotation. And, it's one song leader leading the congregation in singing. But there's something to that you have brought to this that I really appreciate is that you say that your role is to get the congregation to where you can step out, that your goal as a song leader is to not be the show. I mean, that's not what it should be about anyway. God's the audience. But I know you've talked about, the aspect of getting to a point where you don't have to conduct, where you don't have to lead, and you just listen to the congregation sing. Talk a little bit about that, how you get to that point.
Yeah, so my philosophy as a song leader is that our role is to facilitate the congregation to connect to God and to connect to each other through connecting with the text.
Yeah.
So if we can get them to feel the text and whatever that text is saying, speaking, if we can get people to really think about what they're singing, then they're going to connect to, if it's a praise song, they're going to connect to God. If it's an encouragement to each other type of song, they're going to connect to each other or to God, depending on what the song is. But yeah, that's our goal. And for me, I see myself as a facilitator.
Yeah.
Not that I'm a leader, of course.
Yeah.
But facilitating everyone to get to this point. Now, why do we conduct? Well, we conduct to keep it together.
Sure.
Well, what if it's already together? Well, then stop conducting.
Right.
All right. Why do we sing? Well, we got to keep the pitch right. We got to set the style of the song, and we got to keep the tempo right. Well, what if the pitch is already right? What if the style's already right? What if the tempo's already right? Well, then stop singing.
Yeah.
Right?
Let the congregation take over.
I'm not needed.
Right.
And so I love when we get to the point in a chorus of a song, maybe we're on the second or third chorus, we've done it already, everybody knows how it goes, and everybody's singing their hearts out. I like to take the microphone and gently pull it out to where I not an abrupt gone, hey, what happened, but a gently, and then the congregation can hear themselves.
Yes.
And so, we don't need to have any one voice dominate this thing, right? It's about the church.
I love it. I love it. I love that aspect of it, and I think all of our guys do a great job. I've never really thought of, the handheld mic, using a handheld mic, which some of our guys use the over the ear mic, and you use a handheld. I've never thought about that aspect of the goal being to get out of the way, and you just kind of pulling the microphone back and to where you fade out and let the congregation take over, because it is about them singing praises to God and edifying and one another. You've talked about before, you and I have, about the emotive aspect versus the cerebral activity of singing. And you touched on that just a little bit. But if you would kind of go into that a little bit more detail, flesh that out. I mean, it seems to me that, there's too many joyless Christians. I mean, if we're the redeemed people of God, there should be nothing holding back the song that's in our heart. It should be just exuding from us. And even song leaders, I mean, I'm sure we've all had that song leader that seemed like it was a chore to be up there, And one thing I love about you is you seem excited to be leading singing. You're very emotive in the way that you lead. Talk a little bit about that and about the emotive aspect versus the cerebral activity of it.
Yeah, I think music is an emotive activity. I mean, why did God tell us to sing? Why didn't he just tell us to speak the word? Why are we singing at all? What does the music add to the text? Sure. Is my question. So if we were just reciting text together, there would be an emotive element to that because the text incites emotion itself. Why put notes on it? What's the point, right? So let's take the text out and let's just look at music by itself. What does music do? It makes us feel. That's its only reason to really exist.
Right.
It's an expression of feeling, and it causes people to feel. Think about the Darth Vader theme. Dun 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 dun. The very important note right there. So you hear this thing and you go, "Wow, that fits that character perfectly." When you see this character with this black robe coming
marching in
down the hall, and so you're going, "What is it about this music that is so perfect for that?" It's not right. Why that music?
Why that? Yeah.
Yeah, because it emotes that character.
Sure.
Right. And so how does it do it? Right. So we have this play on major and minor. Right. Da 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 da, and then it goes da da da, and it's like, is it major? Is it minor? I don't know. Is this character good or is he bad?
Yeah.
We don't know. There's an uncertainty about that that's reflected in the note choices that John Williams made, right? And so we have these angular rhythmic things which are characteristic of French royalty, these pieces from French royalty that have these dotted 8/16ths, ding, 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 ding. And this is all in there, and these wide angles represent strength. So we don't know who this is. We know he's really important, and he's strong. And the music tells us that.
Yes. Yeah.
It's all encoded in that music. Music emotes, right? And so the best Christian songs are when these great lyrics are paired together with this great music, with all the parts being singable and vertically they make great sounds, and horizontally they make great melodic lines in all the parts, and you sing it and you feel it.
Yes.
Because the music makes you feel it. It will be a whole different experience to recite When I Survey the Wondrous Cross than to sing When I Survey the Wondrous Cross. Music is emotive. And we as leaders need to express that emotion.
Sure.
How many times have we gone to a church and someone gets up, isn't my camera on? I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart, down in my...
Where is it?
It's in there. It's not up here.
Somewhere.
Right? So I think we need to emote the song. We need, if the song is a happy song, let's show it.
Yes.
Let's demonstrate that.
Sing and be happy.
And I got to tell you, Chris, I fought that for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm a trumpet player. We don't smile when we play. It's not how we make our embouchure, right? And so there was a lady in my church years ago, Pam Johnson, who's passed since then, but she always would tell me, Mike, you're a great song leader, but you need to smile. And I thought, well,
See, I can imagine that being a problem for you.
it was a problem because it wasn't me. I was very cerebral and very analytical, and I thought, the music it's about the music, right?
Sure.
I wasn't always the way I am now. And so I thought, Pam's just saying that because she comes from this Sweet Adelines where they overdo it, and they're like, da, 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 da. And I thought, I don't want that, And so I thought, I'm going to make Pam stop telling me that. So I'm going to smile the next time I lead.
Yeah.
And I'm going to overdo it. And I'm going to
just for Pam.
I'm just going to so I can tell her I did it for her. And so she'll stop asking me. And I did that. And do you know what happened? I got so many compliments after church.
Really?
From other people.
Other people were paying attention.
Yeah. Okay. And they said, Mike, I don't know what it was today. I wanted to sing with you. And you seemed just more joyful for some reason. They didn't even know why.
Sure.
And I thought, I'm a believer now.
Yes.
I have got to show the emotion that I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that, and it's changed who I am. It's changed the way that I lead.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that same vein, let me ask you, because this is an opinion of mine. Everybody's got a preference. So this is a preference of mine. Sometimes we've made a concerted effort to learn some new songs at Oldham Lane and to have a mixture every worship service of some of the older songs and some of the newer songs. Some of the newer songs are not well received always. I mean, our folks are good troopers about it. They accept it. And, even if they don't necessarily like the song, they roll with it. But, I know in a lot of places, the newer songs are not well accepted. I hear some people say, well, that one's just, it's just repeating the same thing when actually it's a psalm, and the psalms repeat a lot. And, it's probably as biblical as any song you'll sing because it's straight from the Psalms. But, I think some of the older songs even that we have grown to, as traditionally sing, some of them, we're singing them, but we're not edified because we don't even know what the words mean, right? And so when you talk about singing and feeling it and it being an educational experience and really understanding what it is you're singing, that's a huge part of this, isn't it? I mean, understanding the words, the message, because that's going to add to the emotion of it, right?
Yeah, I think some of these newer songs are not well received by the older folks because they don't like the style of the music.
Probably so, yeah.
But there's a lyric difference too. Mm-hmm. The older songs were more poetic. The newer songs are more plain. Mm-hmm. They're just somebody saying what they were thinking. The older folks were trying to make really interesting poems with really interesting rhyme schemes.
Yeah.
And so it becomes a preference, like you said, of style. And I hope we never argue over style.
I do too.
And as song leaders, I think it's our job to find the pulse of our congregation and what is best for your church. And if your church resonates, what is their worship language, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Some churches resonate with all contemporary, and they don't like the older song. But even then, I would make them sing one or two every now and then. But if you introduce it right,
yes.
it becomes meaningful. It's only not meaningful when you just sing it and then there's no emotive element to it. But when you explain what the song is, people will sing those old songs. They love them. Yeah. Even the newer people, the newer generation, like those old songs if you introduce them correctly.
I agree.
But we try to do, like you said, a mixed bag of songs at Oldham Lane because we have a mixed group.
We do,
right? But our worship language is probably more toward the traditional, but there's a certain element that wants the new. Mm-hmm. So we try to mix it up. But an interesting thing happened, Chris. I worshiped before I came to Oldham Lane. I worshiped at a church in Irving where the worship language was all contemporary.
Yep.
We only sang contemporary songs. We would slip in one hymn per service or something like that to pacify. That's not the right word. I love them too, but there's always one or two that like really want to hear those old songs. So
Sure.
we would do that. But the majority of people wanted these new songs. And so we went to a singing one night, an informal singing at someone's house, and we just got the hymnals out, the old songs, and we just sang through the old songs. My son was about 14. We got in the car and he said, "Dad, I love these songs."
Really?
I said, "Really?" And we don't sing those at church. So I thought, okay, well, I learned something that day. I thought, even this young generation, they like these old songs if they just don't know them.
Yeah.
They haven't been introduced to them. And his favorite song, last time I asked him, was "It Is Well With My Soul."
Yeah.
It's how standard can you get?
And that, again, may be a preference on my part, but I do think that it would be a tragedy that, we raise a generation that doesn't know Old Rugged Cross or doesn't know Paradise Valley or doesn't know.
There's a reason why we still know those songs.
Absolutely.
Because they stood the test of time.
And the message is amazing.
Yeah, and there's a lot of songs that we don't know about. Fanny Crosby probably wrote hundreds of songs we don't sing.
That's right.
Right, not all of them were hits. Right, the ones that we have are the ones that people love.
Right.
So we need to keep them rolling forward. And a lot of the ones we're singing now, they may be faddish, they may be gone, but some of them are going to stand. Yeah. In the next 100 years, we're going to still be singing some
There's
of
an
them.
Amazing Grace in there somewhere. Yeah.
I think it's called "In Christ Alone."
Yeah, I love that song. Love that song. So what time we have left? Okay, I'm shifting gears a little bit, but I want to get this in, and I want to have you back on at some point because we could talk for days about some of this stuff. But as a song leader, and I know you do a lot of teaching of song leaders, give us some high points. Give us some instruction on leading singing or facilitating, as you called it, facilitating worship through song. What are some practical things that song leaders can do or song facilitators can do?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me that, so I do have some notes here.
Yes.
I may look down at my notes.
Everyone will forgive you for looking at notes.
Well, the first thing is to know what our role is. And which, as I mentioned, our role is to get people connected to the text. And if we can do that, they will connect to God and through that text. And so we are trying to get people to connect to that text. And we do that through how we emote, how we connect to people, and things of that nature. But I think even before that, the most important aspect of a song leader would probably be what you would say the same thing about a preacher. We need to be spiritually healthy ourselves.
I agree.
Right? Because this can't be just work. It can't be a show. And if that's what it is, then shame on us.
Exactly.
Right. So we need to make sure our spiritual walk is right. We need to be in the Word. We need to be meditating. We need to have a prayer life. So if we are spiritually healthy, then we're able to emote these songs with genuineness. People always can spot it when you're faking it. Mm-hmm. Or maybe they can't. But even still,
Yes.
Right. And so we need to make sure we're spiritually healthy as worship leaders. And for people that lead every week, I think they need a time off, right? Mm-hmm. And for you, preaching every week, you need times where you are refreshing.
Yes.
Right. Same thing for a song leader, but we have a rotation, but a lot of places have one person that does it every week, and that's really challenging for them. Okay, but some very practical things.
Sure.
I would say make sure that you pick a song that you're able to sing. Yeah. Right? I mean, how basic does it get, right? I've seen people get up and lead songs that they just couldn't sing. Maybe it was too high for them.
You would think that would be a given, but I do see it too.
Right. Make sure the range is within the range of your voice. Make sure that if there are any conducting requirements of that song, that you know how to navigate through those treacherous conducting waters. If it goes slow and fast, or if there's a fermata or something like that, learn how to do that. Sure. If you don't know how to do that, do a different song. Yeah. Right? And this one seems pretty basic, but you got to know how the song goes. Right. So,
another basic, but
exactly.
We've seen it happen.
We see it all the time. I'm looking up at the screen. I'm like, that's not what it says. But, that's fine if you don't read music. But you're the leader. You're supposed to know how that goes. Yeah. And so know how the song goes. And if you don't know, listen to a recording. There's resources out there. So what are things that make the song go bad that you can control? Well, one of them is make sure it's in the right key.
Sure.
right? Songs are written in keys for a reason because they put them in a certain songwriters put songs in certain keys because it fits some part of your voice that works. You don't want the highest note to be way too high for the tenors or the melody. So, Chris Tomlin may be singing like super high, but when I do a Chris Tomlin arrangement, I'm not putting it in that key because the church can't sing in that key.
That's right.
Chris Tomlin sings in that key.
That's right.
And so we have to put things in the range that they need to be in. So we as song leaders don't get up there and guess on the pitch.
Sure.
Right? I use a pitch pipe. In a cappella church, you need some way to get that pitch right. If you don't have perfect pitch, then use something, right? Don't be guessing at that because you could ruin the whole song.
Exactly.
You got to get it at the right speed. Some songs work fast, some songs work slow. You got to know what you're dealing with. Mm-hmm. And I think of it like Oholiab, who was the guy who carved the Ark of the Covenant. Mm-hmm. God chose him, and he's carving this perfectly piece of wood into these images. We do the same thing with music. We're carving out an experience for the church through our tools, which is harmony and melody and meter and rhythm. Yeah. And so we have to know how fast the song is supposed to go. That's part of our job.
Absolutely.
It's musical taste. And so if I'm singing, I will call upon the Lord, it has a certain feel to it, but I will call upon the Lord has a different feel to it. Mm-hmm. And we have to know those things. If I'm singing, when I survey the wondrous cross, there's nothing to that. But if I sing, when I survey whole different emotive element, right? So we got to know how fast the thing goes and make it in its sweet spot of that song. And we've mentioned we need to emote with our face. We need to emote with our body. We need to emote the song. So we're inviting people to join us. That's our role. I want to model it. So the worship leader must be the lead worshiper.
Yes.
And so we must model what we're trying to achieve, whether it's the joy of the song or the sorrow of the song or whatever it is. We model that with our face. We need to lead the people, not the song. We use the term song leader.
Yeah.
But we're not song leaders.
Right.
We're people leaders.
That's right.
And to lead the people, you have to look at them. And so we need to get our head out of that music. And we need to look up, and we need to look at the people we're leading and make eye contact with them, and in different parts of the room. And so we're engaging them to come with us on this musical and spiritual journey that we've planned out.
Absolutely.
And then, like we mentioned before, we need to know when to get out of the mix. Mm-hmm. Either you have a sound guy that knows when you need to be out of the mix, or you get yourself out of the mix. That's why I use a handheld, as we talked about. It's not about us. Yeah. It's about the church. And we need to plan appropriate songs. I think of the whole assembly as like a journey, and there's going to be moments of high energy praise, and there's going to be moments of low energy deep worship. Low energy is not a negative term here. It's more like I'm thinking about the old rugged cross or something. I'm in a deep worship moment, and then I'm going to have I will call upon the Lord. I'm going to have a high energy moment. And the communion is a low energy, deep worship moment. I'm going to try to give a song that leads into that. I'm going to try to get a song out of that. When you get up, I'm trying to do a high energy song. So you get up there with a high energy.
Which I appreciate.
And so we've got these peaks and valleys, and we are creating out of this musical materials like Oholiab that I mentioned, creating these sculptures of the Ark of the Covenant. We are creating an environment of high and low emotive times, and how we select the songs and how they flow together is an art form.
I agree.
And it's got to be something that we think through very carefully. I spend hours and hours and hours planning out my songs before I ever put them on paper and say, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
There are hours and hours and hours that go into that.
Well, I know that you get my sermon beforehand, and you look over it, and that's part of the process.
Exactly. And so if we can connect a theme through there, it's great. I always try to connect to the sermon as much as I can, at least on the closing song.
Absolutely.
I always connect on the closing song to the sermon because I want to pair these things together, wrap it up with a bow at the end, right?
Yeah.
And if you're doing a sermon that lends itself to several good songs, like love or grace or mercy or the cross or something like that, man, that's easy to plan a song set of that.
And you said something that I want to interrupt you there because it's really good stuff. Last night, we record this on Monday, but, Sunday night we had a gentleman, a young man, sophomore in college, that put on Christ in baptism. He's been thinking about it a long time. Dad teaches at ACU. Mom and dad were concerned, when's this going to happen? And just out of the blue, he comes forward and he wants to get baptized. His dad baptized him. As his dad is, changing out of his wet clothes, and I'm sitting there talking to this young man, I say, so what really did it in for you? What was the deciding moment? And he said, I felt like I probably was going to do it today, but he said the invitation song this morning, which you led, Victory in Jesus, he said that really kind of solidified in my mind I need to do this. Now, he said, that's not my favorite song necessarily. I like it, but I don't have any special attachment to it. But he said just something about it that morning. If you lead a song you don't know at the invitation, like you said, or that everybody else doesn't know, you've lost an opportunity, a big opportunity, because the way I see it, that invitation song should be an exclamation point on the sermon. And that is a true testament to what the invitation song can do, that you had an opportunity there because of that song at the right time, the right song for him. And, wasn't the complete deciding factor, but certainly, as he said, helped, to solidify in his mind, I need to do this. If I want to have victory in Jesus, I need to do this.
Yeah. Who knows what the Holy Spirit's going to do with our loaves, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
So it's just amazing to hear those kinds of things. I actually thought through that song quite a bit before I chose that for the invitation song, to be honest with you. I prayed about that song.
Yeah.
And I decided to do a victory song.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Well, I'm glad you did. And Cameron's glad you did.
Because sometimes you do these songs that are more pleading, come to Jesus kind of songs. And that one I decided, I'm going to do a victory song here about the victory in Jesus. And I'm glad the Holy Spirit used that to convict him. That's amazing what the Holy Spirit does.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Mike, you're awesome. Thanks for being on here.
You are awesome.
I thank you so much. Love you, man. And you bring so much to this discussion, and I'm so thankful that you decided to be with us. Please come back, and we'd love to have you again. I want to thank everyone for watching and or listening to the Dear Church podcast. Please tell your friends, spread the word. We're on iTunes. We're on Spotify, YouTube, Facebook. You can find us. Subscribe, tell your friends. If you have questions, remember you can email me at chris.mccurley@rippleoflight.com. I'd love to hear your comments or questions. Might even pass some along to Mike if you have any questions for him. Thank you again for watching. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Sincerely, Chris.